To our daily webinar series hosted by our friends and our sponsors over at Square Inc. up in the Bay Area. And just always want to give a shout out to our friends up in San Fran, Aaron, Ahmed, and the whole team up at Square. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for supporting the Albuquerque and New Mexico small business community as always. And today we had a little bit of technical difficulty, so not enough thank you to our little friends and elves behind the scenes at New Mexico Tech. So we're actually pre-recording today, guys. So if you're seeing this in real time, it's because we had to pre-record. So bear with us. It's the beauty of the technology world we're living in. So we're excited. We have a new panel with us today, but before we get started, I want to remind you guys that the reason this series came to be and the reason that we are hosting this series here at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber for all of our community businesses is because we sent out a survey, and the survey, 5 questions, 5 minutes. We ask that you please participate. This survey really tells us where we need to go with small business in the small business community right now. Everything from loans, federal funding, taxes, HR questions, FMLA, unemployment, workers' comp, different industries, all of that fun stuff. So we're really excited that we've been able to reach out to some of the experts in those fields. And so having that survey is vital. If I could really encourage you guys to find that survey 3 different ways here at the Chamber. Number 1, go to our website, ahcnm.org. It's on the main page, and you can click into that. Like I said, 5 questions, 5 minutes. You can also find us on the COVID-19 initiatives page, which is right at the top of the navigation bar inside the Chamber website. And you can also find us at the the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber Facebook page, and we're pinned to the top for the survey. So we really hope that you guys can complete that. We appreciate it. So one of the questions that was asked comes from one of our small business owners who had some questions about taxes, tax relief, and just general questions about taxes with small business. So we reached out to a very distinguished panel of guests that we have with us today, both heavily involved with the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber over the years through our board, Herencia founders on our amazing wall. And I think it's just important that you all know that we support small businesses, but so do they. And so today, I'd love to introduce you to our panel. We have Mr. Steven Becerra with the Becerra Group, and Mr. Eric Herrera, who is with Blueprint CPA. So I'd like to pass it over. I believe we're going to start with Eric. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do at Blueprint, and also what you do here at the Chamber.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the time today. So like Shannon said, my name's Eric. I've been a long-time Albuquerque resident. I've been in public accounting now for 25 years. And I focus only on privately held businesses and their owners. And so, you know, it's been a really stressful time for business owners these last 5 or 6 weeks. And, you know, so I'm happy to maybe dispel some mythology as it relates to the CARES Act and the Triple P program. And one of my roles on the Chamber is I'm a former treasurer and a current member of the executive committee. So again, very happy and thankful to be here. Thank
you, Eric. Steve.
Oh, hello. Thanks a lot, Shannon, for having us. My name is Steve Becerra, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Becerra Group. We've been around for about 25 years. Our focus is tax and accounting here in the Albuquerque area, but also the state of New Mexico and nationwide. Our focus is small business, but our services include different things. We got bookkeeping and payroll. We have tax compliance, tax return preparation. But I think the most interesting one that we do, and the one that I'm more involved in, is the tax representation. What we do is if you have to interact with either IRS or tax and rev, we get a power of attorney and we step into your shoes to deal with those taxing agencies. And what our job is to ensure that your rights are protected and that you get the best results of the tax issue at hand. We are former IRS agents and revenue officers. And our motto is we sell secrets. So visit us at our website, thebecerragroup.net.
I love that. I'm going to use that to close up, just so you know. Speaking of secrets, what we want to know today is some of those secrets, not just trade and industry secrets, but I think, every webinar we've done so far, all last week and in the first 4 days of this week, have been around the big white elephant in the room, which is the COVID-19. And so I think that today what we're wondering, what small business owners in general are wondering is kind of twofold. What has changed in the last 5 to 6 weeks that they need to know about immediately, something that is important that they need to know? And then also, how do we adjust to this new way of life moving forward when it comes to taxes? So I'd like to start with Eric, if you can start us off, and let's hear a little bit about the CARES Act and then also some tax info.
No problem. So I'm going to start off with the Payroll Protection Program, which is a piece of the CARES Act. I'm going to refer to it as the Triple P. And so today I'm not actually going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the eligibility of the Triple P program. I think there's been a lot of communication by the Chamber and other organizations about that. So that's sort of the who, right? So in a nutshell, the who it's available for is any privately held business with less than 500 employees. So I'll just leave it at that and go on to the what, right? So how does this thing work? How might it help a small business and its owner and its employees? And so the what is actually a pretty important thing. So once you get through the funding piece of the Triple P program, which is actually not a small feat, we have probably about a third of our clients that have completed the process, and probably about another 50% of our clients that are going through the process currently. And so the what can you use these funds for? And so let's talk about that a little bit. And so the what is, you could use the funds for, it's primarily a payroll focused relief program. And so the whole intention here, I think with Congress is actually, there's some good intent in terms of trying to get maximum dollars into the hands of privately held business owners all over the country, because Congress realized, and has realized that small business owners really are the backbone of our economy, and they really make things work. And getting dollars to us in terms of a relief package could be incredibly impactful in a very short period of time. And so as long as dollars are used, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because we just have some pretty limited time here in terms of the rules, but if it's used primarily for payroll, that's one of the big focus areas of this legislation. Payroll also includes health insurance and retirement plan funding. So those start to be two additional important considerations that you need to kind of build into your matrix of what you could use it for. Any lease payments that were in place before February 15th of 2020, and any mortgage interest for agreements that were in place before that time as well. And so the whole theory of the program is once you get your funding, you have an 8-week period that kind of starts on the day of funding and runs for the next 8 weeks. And to the extent that you spend your dollars received through the Triple P program on those costs that I just identified, and there's some other limitations that we're not going to go into in too much depth here today, then the loan actually becomes a forgivable grant. And that really starts to be a really important thing to understand. So assuming you used it on approved costs, the grant portion of the proceeds that you've received never have to be repaid back.
So Eric, that's huge. Let me just repeat that in case anybody is joining late or didn't understand how that came to be. What you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that if they apply and get approved for PPP and they use the funds correctly, they are forgiven. And that is not a repayable loan.
Yes, it's something, again, I mentioned at the opening, I've been in public accounting for 25 years. I've never seen anything like this. So it really is a really different sort of mechanism to get dollars into the economy as quickly as possible. And just to give you a sense of how much, again, I work with only privately held businesses here in New Mexico. So the smallest Triple P funding is about $25,000 that a smaller client has received. The largest is $2.8 million.
Wow.
You know, and so that's obviously a larger size business, but it's, you know, the requirements are all the same. It's based on payroll, and you spend it according to the categories that are outlined. And so it's a significant infusion into the liquidity for a privately held business owner. It
Wow,
really
and
is something.
it's
Yeah.
such a huge help to ease the burden because right now you have small businesses, they're doing their best to stay open and trying really hard to keep their employees employed. So again, kudos, we can't say enough about the plan itself. Talk to us a little bit about the CARES Act. I know there's other pieces of it. We don't have to go into it in detail. We have had a webinar specifically about the PPP, not yet about the CARES Act. So if you could share with us some of those details that definitely affect your industry.
So Steve's actually going to touch on a couple of other components of the CARES Act. So
let me jump in here. I think that if we haven't glossed over your eyes yet, we certainly will by the time this is done.
It's taxes.
And with limited time. So
yes,
you know, I think as you mentioned at the outset, as a result of this health crisis that came upon us, Congress said, okay, we needed to deal with this in a very fast way. And what they did is they came up with 3 phases of laws that they passed, and the phase 1, 2, and 3. And the most critical one, at least that affected most of the businesses, is the phase 3, which is the CARES Act. And that's the one, that particular enactment had things such as the PPP that Eric is talking about, the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and then the one that I'm going to be talking about, which was the employee retention tax credit. But all of this occurred, and I think you used the word fluid, very fluid. And I think that Eric and I can both attest to the fact that it was going so fast. The rules came out. You had raw law. That's it. Raw law. You had no regs. You didn't have anything else. Promulgations would be issued by the IRS, but they were very, very difficult to follow. What I would tell a client in the morning might not be the same thing in the afternoon. That was frustrating. So, but the CARES Act is critical. And I think what happened with the CARES Act, the most controversial piece of it with businesses is that the 360 billion, 340 billion that was issued originally for the PPP and the monies that were allocated for the EIDL, they went away in 13 days. They were exhausted. And so as a result, there is a 4th phase that is being looked at by the House right now. The House is looking all by all intents and purposes, they're going to pass that today. Tomorrow, the latest, gets to the president's desk, and the president will sign it maybe by tomorrow or Monday. And what that did is it can bring $310 million more to the PPP program, and that was billion, not million, 310 billion to the PPP, and 60 billion to the EIDL loan. So there'll be some more monies in there, but if phase 3 was any indication of what can happen to the funds, I think these can go very fast as well. So I think that everyone needs to be aware, if they haven't put in for the PPP or the EIDL, go in and see, talk to your accountant and your banker and see if you qualify for the PPP. But certainly you want to be looking out for those funds.
Can I jump in with a question real quick? Came in. So here's the question. If you've applied for any of the disaster loans, from PPP to EIDL to the bridge loans and all these different stuff, and money runs out, you know, or your financial institution or your lender is saying they're out because of whatever their bank caps are, does that loan stay in process? Is that something they need to discuss with their lender? Do they need to reapply? How does that happen, if you guys know?
You want to take that one, Steve?
Well, I think so. My understanding is that once it's in the pipeline, it's in the pipeline. But certainly, you know, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows that what is in the pipeline. Is it already more than what the $310 billion is going to be allocated with phase 4? I don't know the answer to that. So I would say to anybody who's out there thinking about getting this, get with your banker, because it's an SBA loan that's processed through the banker. Get with your banker if you're going to qualify for that PPP. On the EIDL loan, you know, that's just a direct monies from the Treasury, and you'll be dealing with a loan advisor from directly with the SBA. So whether the money's going to be there or not, but if you're in line, my understanding is you're in line.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I'll add is I do have some clients that have put in applications with multiple sources. So for example, one or two different banks, and so and they've had some success with that. Because once the application's accepted, then they call and remove the application from the other banks, and so it's an opportunity if you have several different relationships with banks to do your best to try to get your application aligned to Steve's point, which is the critical piece.
That's a great tidbit. Thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
that. So what do, okay, so one of the questions that is, what if, okay, so when it comes to qualifying for the PPP or any of the loans you guys are referring to, what happens, you guys are in the tax world, if they didn't file taxes last tax year, number one, and the second part, I'll just combine it into one question is, what is the new deadline for taxes this year for business taxes?
I'll take that one, and then you can chime in, Steve. How does that work?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go.
Okay. So I guess one of the requirements on the application, it's actually a very straightforward application for the Triple P program, but there's actually not a requirement, at least on the application, that they be current with income tax filings, which is kind of a little bit of a head scratcher because I would have assumed that they would have made that a requirement. It's not. So I'm not aware of any client that's been approved that is delinquent in tax filings, but certainly that might be the case. The second question, what was the second question, Shannon?
Is there a new tax deadline for filing small business taxes or just taxes in general because of the fact that COVID has happened? I know some dates have been moved.
Yes, so the big new date that probably most everyone's aware of is July 15th is now the initial due date for all the returns. There's no extension that was needed on the original filing date. That includes any tax due as well as any estimated payments that may be due between now and July 15th. So.
Okay.
Shannon.
Yes, sir. I was going to say, Steve, how would you like to jump in on that?
What I'd like to do is I'd like to add a little bit because we've been talking about the PPP, and obviously that's a financing component of the CARES Act. But the CARES Act also had another component, which was the employer retention tax credit. And this is an interesting one because not everybody's going to qualify for the PPP. And so if you don't qualify for the PPP, but you have issues with employment, you may qualify for the employer retained tax credit. Very interesting credit. This credit is based on the number of employees you got. So there's a threshold of greater than 100 and 100 or less. And we'll focus on the 100 and less because if you have 100 and less, if you keep your employees, and whether they're employed or not, whether they're actually out there working or they might be in the backyard sunning themselves, the credit will apply. It's a pretty fabulous credit. It's based on wages that you pay, your gross wages to all of your employees. The credit is up to 50% of the wages that you pay with a maximum of $10,000 per employee. So the maximum wages that you can pay is $10,000. The maximum credit per employee is $5,000. And what happens with that credit is that that credit then is going to be going against whatever your federal tax deposit is. Now, there are some calculations that you need to consider, but the gist of the matter is that when you come up with what's called the excess ERTC, you will go compare that to your federal tax deposit, your required federal tax deposit, whether you're a semi-weekly or monthly or quarterly or annual filer, but you compare it. If your credit is in excess of your federal tax deposit, you get to keep that excess, and you can even ask for an advance filing a Form 7200. So it's a pretty sweet deal. It's a subsidiary. It subsidizes basically your employees. It's similar to the PPP. The PPP is almost like a unemployment program, only run through the employers and not being run through the state. Because you're not enriching yourself with any of this stuff. It's basically saying we're going to keep you from sinking, but you're not going to enrich yourself. However, the PPP can get a little contentious because sometimes you've got employees, your business didn't go down, and here you got the they got the feds subsidizing your employees. But that's for another discussion. But that is
we didn't write the rules. We did not write the rules.
we did not write the rules exactly.
Just trying to follow. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And so I think the thing that both Eric and I would like to tell our audience is that there are a lot of components, a lot of moving parts to all of these parts of the CARES Act. So when they're implemented, obviously we're helping you on the front end, but you're even going to need some assistance on the back side of it. How are you going to get that forgivable part of it? You're going to have to ensure, working with your accountant or yourself, just to ensure that you have these qualified expenses that you paid for what it's intended to be paid for. So there's that criteria and much more. But I think that the important part of it is it's a good thing. It's something to keep everybody afloat. But there are a lot of manholes without covers that you can fall through. So you need to be very careful.
So it sounds like this ERTC that you're talking about, what I'm guessing, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm a small business owner, the best thing that they can do is immediately check with their tax accountant, get with their CPA, and find out whether they qualify, what are the rules, because again, with everything being so fluid, it's been hard to keep up, and that's why you guys are talking about this and not us. We had the SBA on last week, and he was like, well, we started with the 12-page and it went to 8, and okay, it's a 2-page application now, and so everything's changing day to day. So I want to make sure that small businesses understand they need to get with their tax accountant or their CPA. Now, if they don't have that, obviously, there is tax accountants and CPAs such as the Becerra Group and Blueprint CPAs that can help you guys. You can come talk to them and get with them, and they can talk with you about retaining you as a client, of course, and then working with you through that stuff. So I think that's the best way to start with the ERTC.
Yes,
absolutely.
And I also am going to say, for the record, I've heard very, very little about that. So, and we're on the front lines of everything. Information swinging at us every day. So, other than I've heard about it, I think that this is a good opportunity for business owners out there to know, hey, there's another thing that we didn't know a lot about. So, really encouraging you all to get out there and find out about this ERTC, because I don't know that you all know about that. So there's something there. Now, let's talk a little bit about what business owners need to know moving forward. How do they need, and do they need to? What do they need to adjust about their taxes, the way they do their taxes, about how they're filing in regards to this PPP and all of that stuff? So what is important information for them to walk away with today? Just a little tidbit of information, a takeaway.
So one of the things that I tell my clients pretty often these last 6 weeks is really, let's slow down, let's not panic, right? Because emotion is a really difficult thing to deal with, especially when things are sort of thrown onto a business owner that they could not anticipate. And there's no way that we could have any way anticipated a pandemic like we're in, with the amount of shutdowns. And so once we're able to get the emotion, squeeze the emotion down, then many times it's actually, let's look at a forecast, let's look at a projection, let's look at the business plan that you had in place. And sometimes there's actually not much change that's needed, because I think, again, most business owners that we work with are very strategic, forward thinking, and plan. And while the pandemic has had an impact on their business, to Steve's point, there's actually some business owners that we work with that are actually seeing an increase in their business at this point. And so I would just encourage business owners to slow down, to try to take the emotion out of it, and to really get with a team of advisors that can really help you understand sort of the entire CARES Act, because there's so many pieces to it. There's a lot of legislation that can really help real estate developers, for example. And so in terms of accelerated depreciation, that wasn't available before. And so I think those are the things that, I think most business owners, if they're looking to have an ongoing conversation with a team of advisors, now is the time to do it, because it's not one conversation and it's over.
Steve, what would you like to add to that for small business owners? Just a little takeaway, a little word of advice.
Well, I would just add to what Eric said is obviously to slow down. But I think the other thing is that to understand that your relationship with your accountant and how you interact may be a little different for the next few months and possibly for the next for the new normal. We, for example, working from home, everybody's working remotely. So we're getting our documents either through a secured messaging system, or they have to, we have some old schoolers that will still take us the documents and drop them off at the office at the Dropbox. So the relationship is going to be different. It's the service will not be different, but the relationship and the way it's done may be a little bit different. We ask for some patience, because clearly this is a very fluid situation. Like I said to someone, we are running 100 miles an hour, stopping to drink out of a fire hose. And so it is a little insane, but I would just say that certainly get a hold, find your tax advisor. And so that, because what we touched on today was the very, very, very tip of the iceberg. These acts, especially the CARES Act, has so much in there, and there are so many tax provisions, like Eric mentioned, with regard to accelerated depreciation on the qualified improvement property for restaurants. There's NOLs that have been impacted as well. There's some provisions in there with individuals that can now claim $300 of a contribution, charitable contribution, whereas before they had to itemize their deduction. So there's a numerous amount of provisions. So talk to your advisor.
So it sounds like the big takeaway from what you both just said is, really understand your industry and understand and kind of take the time to learn, because there's so many different ways, and we all know this because we file taxes, whether through small business or through personal, that we don't know about. And so it sounds like this is an opportunity for individuals and business owners to really learn more about what is available to them, and really spend that time, have virtual coffee, if you will, with your CPA when you have a moment, and share your business, so that they can share with you maybe some things that you didn't know about, or new things that are coming up. So I think something fun that might be, before we move on, gentlemen, is let's talk about the world that we're living in today, which is this COVID world. And we're working remotely, we're working social distancing, whatever the term is that we may use. So I'd love to know what you guys are doing to keep yourselves. Now, you guys are tax guys, you're numbers guys, and your brains probably work that way. But if you put a sheet of numbers in front of me, I will go crazy. So what are some of the things that you guys do to kind of relax yourself? What are you doing to keep healthy during this time mentally? Because taxes are very overwhelming for people. So you guys do it all day as a business. So share with the people that get stressed looking at numbers, what are some ways that you guys decompress every day?
I know what Eric does. He walks his dog, because he was.
There you go.
I heard the dog barking yesterday.
So
That's right.
What is your dog's name? What kind of dog do you have?
So his name is Cody. He's a golden doodle, and he's about 100 pounds, and he's probably about 20 pounds overweight. So we are using this pandemic to get in better shape. So that's certainly one thing I do. The other thing I do, which is kind of related, but we have a Peloton bike at the house, and so I'm putting more miles on the road than I ever have. And so that's been a good way for me to burn off some of the anxiety that is either caused by the circumstances or my clients, or or just having a long work day like the rest of us are having. So that's been helpful.
So I think that that's great. I'm sure Cody, being 100 and some pounds, he actually probably walks you instead, Eric.
Yeah,
but
he does. Yeah.
But what I think is great is the positivity, if there's any, in this COVID right now, is it's teaching us to think outside the box. And so I think that sometimes we're like, oh, my tax guy won't call me back, my banker won't call me back, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. And I think sometimes we forget that they are also human beings with families and lives and businesses to run, and many, many clients. So I would plead for patience from the audience out there. Know that they are working to get what you need back to you as soon as possible. But that's why I want to share a little bit of the human side. Steve, tell us about what you do to decompress. And
I too have an overweight dog. She's a pit mix. It's her name is Buffina, and so I mean, for me, it's just to get outside and I do some yard work. I saw a meme the other day where the dog is looking at the owner and with a real skeptical look and said, "Did you get fired? Like, why are you here? Why are you here every day?"
Yeah.
What are you going back to work? Leave me alone.
Yeah. So anyway,
we all have overweight pets. I have a Chihuahua who, at her healthy weight, is 2 pounds, and she's now 3 pounds. So, so we put her in the yard every evening as well. So really what I want to close up with is, it sounds like there's some takeaways for the audience and for the small businesses out there. And I'd love for them to grab a quick piece of paper, because I think these are some important points. This time, yeah, you have a little bit of time on your hands. Unless you're out in the front lines and you're doing all that stuff, your business is still open, but take a few minutes a day to get caught up. Realize that your tax health of your business is just as important as your employees' payroll health and all of that stuff. So take that moment to get caught up, whether it's catching up with your taxes or understanding the new laws. Be enthusiastic about learning. So read a little bit. Come talk to your CPA and your tax accountant with a little bit of knowledge, and understand that they need you as well as you need them. So collaborate and do that. And I think the biggest thing that we can take away from everything, but mostly when we're working with other small business owners such as Steve and Eric, is the patience. We all need to practice patience right now, because we're not always patient, and sometimes it's very frustrating when we're talking about finances and money. And so I'd like to close up with you guys. Any closing words you would like to say to the community, and share with us one more time about the businesses that you represent.
So I would just say that July 15th will get here quicker than you think. So just because it got deferred doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So start your accumulation of your source documents that you need to get that tax return prepared. If you're in business, make sure you're working with your accountant to close out your year. That year should have already been closed out, but if not, close it out so that you can get your tax returns in. So just that's my tidbit, is July 15th will be here sooner than you think.
So I think on April 15th, instead of everybody freaking out and they're at the last 11:59 dropping their taxes in the box, everybody was celebrating this additional time. But I think you're right. We need to remember that will be here tomorrow, in theory, and it's hard in preparing. So thank you, Steve, for that little bit of information. Eric?
Yeah, for me, I think, I would encourage the business owners out there to really think about your business model. And this actually might be an amazing opportunity for you to do the shift that you've been looking to do in terms of a new service line offering, a new product, and really could be the reset that you've been looking for some time. I've had, probably about 15% of our clients really start to think along those lines, and some of them are executing on a new service line, for example, that is really taking off. So I think if we look at this not as a crisis, certainly the pandemic has been a stressful situation, but you start to look at potential opportunities out there. I think that might change the lens you're looking at this through. So.
Well, I just want to thank you guys so much. I think we took away some really great information. We're looking forward to sharing this. And for all of you out there, if you've missed this will be reposted at our website at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber, www.ahcnm.org. You can click on the COVID link up top, and right underneath, you're going to see the small business webinar series hosted by Square, our friends at Square, and also New Mexico Tech. So thank you to Steve, thank you to Eric, and everybody stay safe and healthy out there. And we will see you tomorrow for our Friday webinar. Everybody have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Shay, did you get all that?